Today on With the First Pick, we're firing up the old mock draft machine for the first time this fall. That's right. We'll do a live mock draft on the show, all 32 picks. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Rand Carthon. This is episode 307, and Rand, there are 189 days until the 2026 NFL draft in Pittsburgh, PA. Time is a-ticking because it feels like yesterday we were at 340 or something celebrating the end of the 2025 draft class. Yet here we are. How are you doing, my man?
Man, I'm good. It almost feels weird to be back on the network. I thought they may have forgotten about us, but no, it's always good. And I was waiting on the hamster wheel to get to turning in the background to get to 189. But yeah, I mean, it is flying by.
Producer Sharon Rand is clearly on one today. He has a lot of opinions. I gave the hamster the day off, so we don't have the countdown clock working in the background. But I'll get that set for Monday. Rand, when you point a finger at someone, you got 4 pointing back at yourself. So just keep that in mind, okay?
Oh, trust me, I already know that. You forgot the industry I just came from. So
I will say you look a lot less stressed right now than maybe you were 12 months ago. So I'm happy to be a part of that.
You see my skin? I'm popping right now.
Yeah, you look great, so I'm happy for you. And fun fact, you and I are the same age, so look how good you look now after you took a year off. We're not the same age. All right, let's get to this thing before people actually think that you are, in fact, 38 years old. All right, look, one rule in this mock draft, you pick first. After that, you're going to alternate. Everything else is wide open. And we'll have some conversations about these guys, and we'll rip through this thing in the next hour here. So, Rand, you are first on the clock, and this is the draft order as we sit here on the day of our Lord, October 16th, 2025. So any issues you have with the draft order, take it up with your team for not winning enough games, if that is your complaint. First up, the New York Jets, who are currently winless. They can't win on any continent. Hopefully they can make things happen this week. They're playing the Panthers. You're picking first here. What are you doing for the New York Jets, Rand?
Well, I mean, we talked about it after the performance last week where you lose a game, 13-11. Your defense outscores your offense 2-0. And, you know, the scrutiny that Justin Fields has come under playing the quarterback position. So I think it's only right to address the quarterback position and going with from the University of Indiana or Indiana University, Fernando Mendoza, quarterback. And I think you said it best, man. He reminds you a lot of Jared Goff, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And oh, by the way, where did head coach Aaron Glenn come from? He came from Detroit, brought Tanner Engstrand over with him, who came from Detroit as well. So it'll be a seamless fit for Fernando Mendoza to fit into that offense.
Yeah, it feels like, and I said this to you yesterday on the podcast when we talked about a lot of these college players, including Fernando's matchup with Dante Moore when Indiana faced Oregon, that this class, even though there's no Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow at quarterback in the first round, could end up being better than the 2021 class where Trevor went first, then Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, who we're now talking about, and Mac Jones all went in the top 15. Sometimes, and this is a big pet peeve of yours, and it was of our buddy Rick Spielman, in the media, we're in such a hurry here in the middle of October to make sure we check all 32 first-round picks and have the homework done now. This is a long process. We've got 189 days. So I'm guessing you would say be a little cautious and slow up a little bit, but that's not the world we live in. You do feel pretty good about Fernando Mendoza as QB1, though.
No, I do. And
okay,
based off of what we've seen out of the other quarterbacks, I think he has been the most consistent. And then I think he has an elite trait, which is his ball placement, which is something you don't really see out of a lot of these quarterbacks, especially in the systems they play in now. But him playing in that Indiana offense, like if you haven't watched it, go watch the Indiana offense. It's a pro offense with a lot of pro concepts, and you get to see a lot of the pro throws translate in his offense. So he was fun to watch.
And he's going to be throwing to some pro receivers, and maybe we'll talk about one of those guys later today. So absolutely, he's played a ton of ball. We talk about the Bill Parcells theory, the Drew Brees theory now as well. So we'll circle back to that when we get to some of these other QBs in this draft class. Next up at pick number 2, the Cleveland Browns have 2 first-round picks. They own this one, sadly, as we sit here at number 2. And I thought about a quarterback here, but I know they're picking later in the first round. So I said, I'm going to take the best player on my board and a young man who has played out of his mind so far this season. Edge rusher out of Miami, Reuben Bain Jr., And as I say that, Rand crosses his arms because here's what I'll say, Rand. I text you this morning. I love the way Ruben has played this year. I think you're not quite as high on him as I am. He's unofficially 6'3", 270 and change. And I went back and checked. Of all the edge rushers drafted in the top 10 over the last decade, the average height, weight, arm length for those edge rushers, 6'0", so almost 6'5", 263 pounds, and 33.5-inch arms. And when you start talking about offensive linemen, anything under 33 inches, mostly means you're going to kick inside. Similar conversation for edge rushers. So he doesn't check all those boxes in terms of just the eyeball tests. And when you line him up to measure him, he does pass the test for me, the eyeball test, when you watch him play. All that to say, any concern about taking Ruben Bain Jr. this high because he doesn't look like Julius Peppers getting off the bus?
Well, I think for me, it's more than just how he looks, right? So, and we had a very long discussion about this last night when I called you in the middle of the night because I'm
9:30 p.m. Eastern, by the way,
which is very late for you. So, I just think when you're taking an edge rusher or edge defender, we'll say in the top 5, you want them to be more than just an elite run defender. And that's where I see him. I see him as an elite run defender. I think his power is real. I think he does have some pass rush traits just in terms of being able to play with power, has that, the hezzy move where he can slip you hand swipe. You like that. He just doesn't always finish at the quarterback, which, is going to be a problem, especially if you take him in the top 5. So, and then you mentioned 30-inch arms. Good luck going back to finding which, pass rushers from the past have been successful with 30-inch arms. Not that is the end-all, be-all, but just think about this. Think about how everybody was crushing Will Campbell for 32-inch arms playing tackle.
Right.
So, I love the way he plays. I love his motor. I love his effort. I love the physicality. But for me, if I'm taking a edge guy, like think about it. Myles Garrett went 1. And how much of a difference are you seeing Myles Garrett and Ruben Bain? To me, it's a big difference.
I get it. We also missed on TJ Watt because he was stiff, quote unquote.
Yeah, but TJ also went in the 20s.
Right. Okay. Yeah, he didn't go in the 7th round like Jonathan Cooper. Who's balling out, but that's a conversation for another time. All right, look, these are the conversations that teams are going to have, and we might as well have it now. So we're split on Ruben Bain Jr. The Browns are going to take him here line him up next to Mason Graham, who had some measurables, quotation mark issues too coming out. He went 5th overall last year, and then he'll play opposite Myles.
And that's and I'm sorry, I'm glad you say that.
Yeah,
because one of the rules is you don't want to have a team of exceptions. And so now if you're taking Mason Graham, who is undersized, no matter how you cut it, he's undersized playing in there. And then now you put a height and length deficient guy next to him, you're starting to build, and they're a 4-down team. Now you got half of your line is exceptions. So just a thought.
No, that's a good point. All right. We're dragging already talking about these top 2 guys here. So next up, Baltimore Ravens picking 3rd. What a time to be alive. They're having a rough stretch, mostly because of injuries. What would you do if you're Eric DeCosta here at number 3 for the Ravens?
Peter Woods, D-tackle out of Clemson. It's simple. Nnamdi Madubuike's on IR right now with a neck injury. We don't know the severity of that. Broderick Washington, who's also on IR, will be 30 next year. Your run defense is 26th, and you've allowed the second most rush touchdowns in the league with 9. You got to address it with a player of this caliber being there for you. Pick number 3, getting the guy that's going to shore up your run defense.
All right, next up, I don't disagree with any of that. The Miami Dolphins, another team that's hit a rough patch, and I imagine Tua and Mike McDaniel would like a do-over in terms of some of the things that have been said from their star quarterback. In the meantime, at number 4, the Miami Dolphins, I haven't taken Spencer Fano, the right tackle out of Utah. He's probably the most technically sound offensive tackle in this draft class for me. Probably needs to get a little bit stronger, but we can say that about most of these offensive linemen. even Caden Proctor, for being honest, even though he's at 360-ish and change. But this team has a ton of needs. And if you told me they were thinking about a quarterback at some point, if they could figure out the Tua contract situation, that would not shock me either. We'll see if there are changes in the front office coaching staff. But right now, finding an offensive lineman who's healthy and who can play right away feels like it's a pretty important issue that the Dolphins need to confront. Next up, number 5, New Orleans Saints. There's no way you're benching my guy Spencer Rattler, who's playing at a high level on a not great team. It's hard to say that with a straight face. What are you doing, Mickey Loomis?
Quarterback Dante Moore out of Oregon. He just feels like a Kellen Moore quarterback. And obviously there's some thought there with the Nussmeier connection with his dad being the OC. But I think Dante Moore, and just his calmness, his poise, his decision-making, his accuracy, I think he just fits what Kellen Moore wants at that quarterback position. You think about the quarterbacks that he's had. He's had Dak Prescott. He's had Jalen Hurts. And I think Dante Moore kind of fits that mold better than Garrett Nussmeier.
Yeah, and we talk in depth about all these players on the podcast. So just check out With the First Pick wherever you get your podcast if you want more, because we'll be talking about these guys for weeks and months to come as well. We're just ripping through these guys so we can get to the break here. But Dante Moore, one thing to note, along with some other guys we're going to talk about, hasn't played a lot of ball. So we'll see what that means in the totality of the evaluation. But it's hard to argue what he's put on tape so far. Indiana gave him a little bit to work with, so we'll see how he bounces back from that. Next up, number 6, Tennessee Titans. They just fired their coach. I went with TJ Parker, edge rusher, who you certainly like, and I think you like him a little bit more than Reuben Bain Jr. The Clemson team has been underwhelming this year, but TJ has flashed. So has Peter Woods, his teammate along the defensive line. TJ Parker, in terms of his motor, reminds me a little bit of Mike Green last year, who went in the second round, mostly because of off-field issues. And the Titans, you can never have enough edge rushers, so I'm going to get them an edge rusher here. Femi Oladejo just went on IR, so stock that position up and get after it. All right. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, picking at number 7, another team that no one thought would be picking this high midway through October here, as you look at the top 6 on our way to break. Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. What will they do? We'll talk about that right after this break. All right, Rayan, we are up to pick 7 here. We'll speed it up a little bit because we like to chat about these quarterbacks. The Bengals are on the clock, which is a wild thing to say. Joe Burrow's hurt, obviously. They need a ton of stuff, mostly on defense. And I'll give you the floor, sir. What are you doing for the Cincinnati Bengals to make this team something other than terrible?
Going with probably a little bit of a surprise for some, potentially, maybe not, but going with a culture changer here at pick number 7 with Ohio State safety Caleb Downs. If you look at how he's being used in Matt Patricia's defense, playing a versatile role, moving him around, putting him in positions to make plays, and just who he is as a young pro, I think he fits Al Golden's system to a T and allows you to get a playmaker on the back end in that secondary and to help start bringing along this defense, which needs a lot of help at this point. So going with Caleb Downs.
Yeah, the brother of Josh Downs. And I don't know if this is too high for a safety. You had the conversations like the running back sometimes, how impactful can they be? But you get the right safety in there, and it can trickle down and change the culture. I would use the Kyle Hamilton example, but they're battling with injuries in Baltimore to such a degree that doesn't work now. It certainly worked last year. Next up, pick number 8, Las Vegas Raiders. And I've said it before. I'll say it again. I am one of the biggest Eugene Cyril Smith III fans on planet Earth. Geno has not played well this year, and you can point to any number of reasons that you want to. He's 34 years old. They need a quarterback. And this might be too high, too. Ty Simpson, quarterback out of Alabama, and bringing it back to the Bill Parcells / Drew Brees conversation, he has 5 starts. Drew Brees said you need 50 starts in the NFL to figure out who you are. 5 starts in college football for Ty Simpson. He looks like he has played a ton of ball with the poise, the arm strength, the accuracy, the anticipation, good decisions in the pocket, throwing his receivers open. Anything else you want to throw in there cliche-wise. He's a really good athlete, or a better athlete than perhaps you might give him credit for. He's a quote-unquote pocket passer, but he can win with his legs. I think he has good pocket movement, plays well under pressure. Is this too high, in your opinion, Rand Carthon, GM with the first pick, to take Ty Simpson if you need a QB?
No, I think it is high.
Okay.
But I mean, if you like the quarterback and you feel like he's going to help bring your program in, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that Geno has another year under contract with the Raiders. I want to say so he's not. You don't have to rush him out there to play right away.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll find out together. He's a guy that has been making some moves this fall in terms of including himself in the conversation in a wide open quarterback class. All right, next up, number 9, the New York Giants. They don't need a quarterback apparently, but they do need to help that quarterback. What are you doing for Jackson Dart?
Yeah, man, you spent some resources on the defense. You've spent a lot of resources on the defense, whether it's through free agency and through the draft. You used the 3rd overall pick last year on our dude Carter. But now you have your quarterback, like you mentioned. You have a young running back who's exciting. And then to lose your number 1 receiver in Malik Neighbors, you kind of see the lack of weapons that the Giants have. So I went with wide receiver Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State here to give them a reliable pass catcher that can work those short to intermediate areas and really will open up things for Malik Neighbors on the other side.
He feels like a perfect pairing for Malik, who does everything well, and Jordan does everything well, but just a little less athletically, if you will, than Malik. And that's no slight against Jordan. It's just hard to find a bunch of Malik Neighbors out there waiting to play football. But Jordan's had a really good season this year. Was a strong season last year for Sam Levitt, and that really good year for Arizona State. And I think has an opportunity to be the first wide receiver off the board. Another young man that has the opportunity to be the first wide receiver off the board is this next guy. I'm picking for the Arizona Cardinals here. I went with USC wide receiver Mekhi Lemon, and he is built differently than Jordan Tyson physically, but he plays just as big. He is insanely athletic, short area quickness. He's good on running routes to all 3 levels. The ball in his hands, there's a good chance it's going to be a 20-plus yards after catch situation, and it could end up in the end zone. The other thing with the Cardinals is they have a bunch of guys coming up on contracts at wide receiver. Greg Dortch, Zay Jones, Simi Fehoko after this season. And then next season, Michael Wilson and Elijah Higgins, who's sort of a tight end at this point. Xavier Weaver also going to be available. I love playing him opposite Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's who I went with the Cardinals at 10. Next up, Houston Texans at 11. And C.J. Stroud is looking to recapture that form from 2023, his rookie season. And I think part of that is probably fixing the O-line. What do you want to do for C.J. in Houston?
Yeah, consider shoring up the interior of the D-line here. And I'm pretty sure there will be a player that emerged. Hopefully for the Houston Texans, they're not picking here at 11, they're picking later. But instead, like you mentioned with C.J. Stroud, allowing him to return to form, and just with the fluctuations they've had across the O-line, went with University of Miami offensive lineman Francis Mauigoa. I think he's a guard. A lot of people think he's a tackle. We'll let the Houston Texans figure it out, and because of his versatility, he'll allow you to get your best 5 on the field and help shore up that offensive line for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, he's been really good this season, really good last season as well for Cam Ward. This year, obviously blocking for Carson Beck, and I think he's going to have a real chance to be a first-round pick. Next up, pick 12, the Dallas Cowboys, and I'll give you the floor because we're talking about the Lord's position here, because I'm not taking an edge rusher. Keldrick Falk is still out there. Mateo Uiagalelei is still out there if that's something that you prefer. I have the Dallas Cowboys taking Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame. Grade that pick.
No, I think it's it's an A. And the reason why I say that is because it'll give them an explosive playmaker at that position. Now, listen, Javonte Williams is playing really well, and he looks to really be healthy. And he's doing a really good job for him right now. But he does not have that explosive home run ability that Jeremiah Love has, and would be a really good fit in Brian Schottenheimer's offense. So I think that is a home run pick for them. And if you think about it, and you look at the history of the Dallas Cowboys, whenever they've been clicking and they've been rolling, is because they've had that guy in the backfield. And so this would give them an opportunity to do that.
Even with some edge rushers still out there, they also have another first-round pick by way of the trade they certainly made for Micah, so they can circle back and get an edge rusher if that's what they just decide to do. All right. One last thing before we take a break here. I asked you this a couple weeks ago. You said no. You going to pay George Pickens?
We'll franchise him. I need to see it again.
Okay. All right. Let's recap what we did here. Pick 7 through 12 before we take another break here. Caleb Downs headed to Cincinnati to help that secondary. Ty Simpson is the third quarterback off the board, to the Las Vegas Raiders. Pick 8. Jordan Tyson, big play wide receiver at Arizona State, is headed to the Big Apple to help Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors. Mekhi Lemon, one of my favorite players in this draft class, USC wide receiver, headed to Arizona. Francis Mauanoa, offensive tackle, plays right tackle for the U. Rand thinks he perhaps kicks inside to the next level. We'll find out, going to Houston. And then finally, no defensive help for the Dallas Cowboys. We're taking Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame, because he's that good. By the way, keep an eye on Jadarian Price, his teammate at Notre Dame, who we've talked about on the podcast. That young man's going to get drafted with the way he's playing as well. All right, let's take a break here. When we come back, headed to Charlotte. Carolina Panthers on the clock. Let's see what they do right after this break. Welcome back. Welcome back to With the First Pick here. And we're just, producer Sharon and I are being regaled by what it's like to be Rand Carthon in real life. That's who I want to be in my next life. I do appreciate, Rand, that when you have to stay, I don't want to call it your mother-in-law, when you have to stay at her house and it's 800 degrees in the house, because that's how some people like to keep it, that you do have to come back to reality and live with the rest of us. So I do appreciate that part of it. Any comment?
I hate both of you.
Oh, if we didn't love you, we wouldn't make fun of you. All right, next up, Carolina Panthers. Jeremiah Love's off the board. They don't necessarily need running back help here, but they do need help on the defensive side of the ball. What are you going to do for Idro here, the defensive coordinator, to help out Carolina?
I'm going edge. Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. Right now, through 6 games, the Carolina Panthers have 5 total sacks as a team. 5 total sacks. They got 5 guys with 1 sack each, and 2 of those sacks are by linebackers. So they need more production out of this linebacker position. You took Nick Scorton last year. You took Princely last year, and then you've spent money. I'm not doing it. Don't even point for me to do that, Ryan. But you spent money in free agency on DJ Wanham there, but you're still not getting that production. So adding Keldrick Falk here, I think, will help shore up the edge of that defense.
Yeah, Princely Mammy-Ellen out of Ole Miss, of course, and Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M by way of Purdue. And those are interesting names because we're trying to figure things out with Keldrick Falk and Reuben Bain Jr. If Reuben Bain Jr. were in Keldrick Falk's body, how much better would you feel about him as a top 5 pick?
Again, for me, it's not the body.
Okay.
It's
I got to figure out how to word it so I can get you to come around.
No, it's the instinct, it's the feel, and we'll keep rolling. But this is going to be a months long conversation.
Right. Yeah, it's like when you're you and your spouse are having a conversation about, what color you want the wall to be in the kitchen, and you don't want it one color, she wants it another color, and you're trying to meet in the middle, and usually someone has to win, and usually. If you've been married, it ain't the husband. So we'll see how this goes. Nick Scorton's interesting as well. I just mentioned him briefly. He was a 2nd-round pick. We had a lot of conversations at this point a year ago about is he a 1st-round pick along with his teammate Shamar Stewart at the time. And physically they looked the part. The production wasn't there for either of them. Shamar physically looked a little bit more the part perhaps, and that's why he ended up going inside the top 20, and Nick lasted until the 2nd round. Doesn't mean you can't be a great football player, but these are the things we try to sort through because there are only going to be 32 first-round picks. All right, next up, the Chiefs are on the clock here at 14. Again, it's really interesting to think of the Chiefs picking in the middle of round 1, but that's where they are here in mid-October. I had them going cornerback with Avion Terrell out of Clemson. He's been one of the few bright spots on this team. Defense has been a little bit better, not a lot better than the offense, which is sort of performed in fits and starts. His brother, of course, is A.J. Terrell, coming off that huge game on Monday night for the Falcons, where they beat up on the Buffalo Bills, which is something you don't see very often. His brother, Avion's a little bit smaller, but he plays with an edge. He plays like he doesn't understand that he's 5'11", 185. He plays closer to 6'1", 200 for me. But I love his ball skills. He feels like a good fit in that Spagnuolo defense. So I had the Chiefs taking a cornerback here. Next up, Washington Commanders. And I'll just say this. Before the Adam Peters regime arrived, along with Dan Quinn, they drafted a linebacker in the first round named Jamin Davis out of Kentucky, and he didn't work out. Athletically, you could see it on tape at Kentucky. I think this player you're going to talk about here would be a enormous upgrade at the linebacker position, no matter who you paired him up against.
Yeah, and this is probably of this whole thing, this is my favorite pick here because I'm just excited about the player. But I went with Arvell Reese, linebacker out of Ohio State, and he is so versatile. And I mentioned it with another guy earlier. He will allow Dan Quinn and his defense to get their best three linebackers on the field because he could play the will linebacker spot for you. And, I mean, Bobby Wagner just keeps showing up and making plays, so he could potentially be back next year. And putting him next to Bobby Wagner and with Frankie Louvu, he has similar versatility as Frankie Louvu to be able to play on the edge. Because I think right now, as it stands, their linebackers are Bobby Wagner, Louvu, and Von Miller plays to Sam. And I think you can now move Louvu to Sam and then put Arvell Reese in there at Will Backer. And it just gives you versatility, man. He can do it all. He plays off the ball. He's instinctive. He's physical. And I think he's going to be a problem for running backs in terms of blocking him on blitzes because he's so heavy-handed. And you look at the size, I mean, he's a unverified 6'4", 240. This guy's a really good young football player that I think will fit really well with this Commanders defense.
Let's say you need an off-ball linebacker or someone that offers the versatility that Arvell Reese offers, and you need a safety. Who are you taking first, Arvell or Caleb Downs?
For me, I would, and I love Caleb Downs, but I'm saying for this defense in particular, I think you go with the linebacker because the linebacker in this scheme is a little more important than the safety. Not to say it's more important, but because of the onus that's put on the front seven, it's you don't pass upon this guy. You could find a safety. If you look at the early part of this defense, they spent a first-round pick in terms of Seattle. They spent a first-round pick on Earl Thomas, but then your next starting safety, who was an all-pro safety, was a fifth-round pick. If you look at Talanoa Hufanga in the same defense in San Francisco, he was a fifth-round pick. And so you don't pass up on the linebacker in this defense because you ask the linebackers to do so much.
Yeah, and that versatility is what makes Arvell so intriguing because he's not just, we talked about Cincinnati's Jake Golday on the podcast yesterday, and they're asked to do similar things, but they do it a different way just based on what the gifts God gave them when they were born. Both are good players. Arvell, I don't know if anyone has made a bigger jump from last season to this season than Arvell Reese, who's not a quarterback. So that's going to be a fun story to continue to watch. Next up, pick 16 here, Chicago Bears. I got some edge rush help to help out Montez Sweat here. I went with Mateo Uiagalelei, and yes, that's DJ's brother. Plays at Oregon, number 10. He's, I think, unverified 265, 270. He's still young. He's 20 years old. And you're just sort of scratching the surface on what he could bring. Sort of like Nick Scorton. Nick Scorton was young last year, and he's continued to grow in that role. So this is more of a projection than a finished product. But, man, you see some flashes of things that he's capable of doing, and you get pretty excited about it. It's just a matter, and you talk about this all the time on the podcast, Rand. You can find coaches that can coach these guys up, or they're convinced they can, and that could precipitate you drafting them where they end up going, and maybe they need to go a little bit later. But anyway, Mateo Yu going here to Chicago Bears. Next up, L.A. Rams. And this is the pick they got via Atlanta when the Falcons traded back up into the first round to get an edge rusher, James Pierce Jr. Who do you have the Rams taking here at 17, Rand?
I have them taking Jermod McCoy, corner out of Tennessee, and I pause because it would either be him or Mansour Delaney, one of the two.
Yeah.
Right. And I went with Jermod McCoy here because of the ball production, and I know he's coming off of the ACL. But he should be healthy for the pre-draft process and be able to roll. But he has legit ball production, and I think I had the Rams taking a corner last year in the bottom of the first round, and they didn't do it. So I'm going to roll the dice and see if they'll finally take a corner because they do need help on the perimeter to help that defense.
Yeah, absolutely. So he tore his ACL in January of 2025. So you would hope, fingers crossed, that by the time the All-Star games roll around and the pre-draft process and the combine is there, he's able to work out at least for some of these teams because he is a really good player. All right, one more pick here before we take a break here. The Minnesota Vikings are back on the clock. And it feels weird to say because they have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, But they're going to need some wide receivers outside of those two names because everyone else's contract is pretty much up. Jalen Naylor's contract's up. Rondale Moore, they traded for Adam Thielen. His contract's up after the year as well. He may retire. We don't know now that he's in his early 30s. I had him taking Carnell Tate, wide receiver out of Ohio State. We talked about him over the summer, and I liked him. This fall, he is taken it to another level. He feels like in the same conversation as Jack Smith and Jigba and Emeka Ibuka, not that he's that type of player, but in that we're underselling his physical gifts, and he is so smooth in which the way he plays that he does things that are difficult, and he makes them look easy. And he's a big, strong, fast wide receiver who can make contested catches, and I think he translates into what Kevin O'Connell likes to do with those receivers, and I love the idea of him playing opposite J.J. With Jordan Addison in the slot. Now you're cooking with gas over there. So, Minnesota Vikings, Carnell Tate, wide receiver at pick 18 out of Ohio State. All right, let's take another break here when we come back as we look at picks 13 through 18 here. Number 19, and I don't remember the last time they picked this side. The Buffalo Bills are currently on the clock after their second straight loss, most recently to the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football. We'll see what they do in this mock draft right after this break. All right, Rand, Buffalo Bills ain't playing great, which is a wild thing to say. They need help with wide receiver. I think Brandon being the GM would confirm that. But what are you doing for Buffalo pick 19 here?
LSU corner Mansour Delaney, love the way he plays football. You see him play a variety of techniques, off press man, and he's just so technically sound. And you talk about toughness in terms of run support fitting off the edge, which fits this cover 2 system that Sean McDermott runs. I think he'll be a perfect fit to slide in and replace the old man Trey White and be the starter over there for years to come.
Yeah, I love this pick a lot. He's had a really good season thus far, transfer from Virginia Tech. Next up, Denver Broncos at pick 20. And I'm going to keep giving them athletic tight ends and just to see what happens because Sean Payton loves athletic tight ends. They signed Evan Ingram. Bo Nix likes throwing a tight end. So I went with Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. Hasn't had the season he probably wants to have at this point, but forget looking the part. He can block if you want him in line, and he is a playmaker in space when he is used in that way. And he's also a special teams game changer. Like, he can do everything on special teams from playing quarterback in extra point situations to running fake punts. So a lot of versatility. I feel like that's a weapon Sean Payton would love to use along with Bo Nix. So I took Kenyon Sadiq here, even though the productivity isn't probably where he wants it to be halfway through the 2025 season. All right, next up, the Cleveland Browns with their second pick, and this is the pick from the Jaguars as part of that trade for them to move down from 2 to 5 when Travis Hunter went to Jacksonville. The Browns, by the way, took Reuben Bain Jr. at number 2. What are you doing for Cleveland here at 21?
Well, they've had a revolving door at this position since the retirement of Joe Thomas, and currently right now DeJuan Jones is on IR. They traded for Cam Robinson. He's kind of been in and out of the lineup, and then KT Levison has been tasked with playing over there, and he's struggled. So I went with Utah tackle Caleb Lomu to be their cornerstone left tackle moving forward. And you mentioned on a previous show the history of Andrew Berry drafting younger players right. to have there to develop. And so Caleb Lomu fits the athletic profile and character profile for the Cleveland Browns.
Makes sense. No quarterback, so they're rolling with Dylan Shador QB behind door number 3. So we'll find out how that plays out. Next up, pick 22 here, the Los Angeles Rams. You had them taking Jermod McCoy at pick 17. They have 2 first-round picks, a cornerback out of Tennessee. Pick 22, Caden Proctor still on the board, and he got off to a slow start this season, the left tackle out of Alabama. He had to lose some weight. He got down, quotation marks, to 359, and that's when Alabama started using him in the quick game as a receiver on a screen pass, and he was running the ball last week against Missouri. There's no doubt about the athleticism. I think it's just an issue of him controlling his weight. The Rams going to need some help along the offensive line. They have a couple guys up contract-wise. You talked about the needs they had in the secondary, which is why they took Jermod McCoy. So I think if you come out of this with Jermod McCoy and Caden Proctor and you feel comfortable with Matthew Stafford going forward for the next year or so, this is a pretty good draft haul. You have to feel pretty good about that. Next up, Detroit Lions at pick 23. What are you doing for Detroit?
Well, real quick, going back to Caden Proctor, I didn't take him for the Cleveland Browns because I'm pretty sure we have one guy that has weight issues in Caden Proctor and another guy in DeJuan Jones. I don't think you want them two in the same room together. So that
Fair
was
enough.
why, for those who may question that. But for the Detroit Lions, and this is a iffy pick, probably in my mind the most iffy pick that I made for these teams, just from a character standpoint. I don't know that he's the character profile, but he is definitely the talent profile. And I went with Florida defensive tackle Caleb Banks here for the Detroit Lions to help shore up the interior of that D-line and give them an interior pass rusher to go with those guys they have coming off the edge.
Yeah, Caleb Banks hadn't played this year because of foot injury, hasn't played much, but he certainly flashed when we talk about him this summer. Defensive line class is going to be wide open, too, and we'll maybe talk about another defensive lineman here in a moment. Pick 24, the Seattle Seahawks. Mike McDonald's doing a pretty good job over there. We knew what he could do defensively. Sam Darnold's playing well at quarterback for Seattle. Mike McDonald in year 2. I had them taking Tennessee cornerback Colton Hood. And he, to me, fits the profile of the prototypical Seahawks cornerback going back to the Pete Carroll days. He can play more than just a cover 3. He can play man. He can play zone. He's physical. We talked about Jermod McCoy. That would have been the best secondary in college football had Jermod been healthy this year. But Colton Hood has played exceedingly well this season for the Vols, and we'll see how high he ends up getting drafted. He feels like a Mike McDonald type player in terms of the way he plays cornerback for Tennessee. All right, next up, New England Patriots. You going to help Drake May out, or are you going to help out Mike Vrabel's defense?
No, we're going to help out Mike Vrabel's defense, and we're going to go with Oregon defensive tackle Amari Washington just to help shore up that defensive front. You already have Milton Williams, who they spent money on in free agency, and now you add a versatile young interior guy, because he could play that nose for you at 6'3", 330 pounds, but then you can also put him in some rush situations at a 3 technique because of his quickness and athleticism. And so I think he'll help give them yet another interior guy that can be strong against the run, but then also give you a pass rush presence.
Yeah, Amari Washington's an interesting one. We talked about him on the podcast yesterday, and you talked about it, and other folks have talked about it. He's just scratching the surface, so he is not a finished product. Athletically, he's very exciting in terms of the technical skills. I think he has some room to grow, but, all these kids do. They're all 20, 21 years old. All right, let's recap picks 19 through 25 before we take our last break here. No quarterbacks. We'll see if any quarterbacks go in the last few picks here. 7 picks to go. We'll see what happens. A couple teams need QBs, including the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see what happens in these final 7 picks right after this break. All right, ran down the home stretch here. And pick 26th, the Los Angeles Chargers. We are living in a world where no Penn State player has been drafted yet. And the one I'm about to say is not one that was on folks' radar, at least in the most common sense, because Drew Aller was the name we heard. Nick Singleton was a name that we talked a lot about in the summer. I'm going with Vega Ione, the offensive guard. And my notes on him, one of the cleanest prospects in this class. He's an earth mover in the run game, elite anchor, and uses his hands well in pass protection. You look at him, and you tell me that's someone you want to line up against. I will take him any day of the week. Plug and play for the Chargers. They've had obviously injury issues along the offensive line, but we know that Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball a lot. And Ione is good in both the run game and in pass pro. I think he's going to be a first-round pick. Next up, and this is a fun one, San Francisco 49ers. Juwan Jennings 2.0 question mark?
No, I think this guy he can give you better production than Juwan Jennings. And I'm going with Indiana wide receiver Elijah Surratt. If you just look at the 49ers depth chart, just in terms of their receiver position, obviously they've had a ton of injuries, but you really only have of top-level guys, Ricky Pearsall, and hopefully Brandon Ayuk is back at some form this season and healthy enough to get going next season. But then outside of that is pretty wide open. And I don't expect Juwan Jennings to be back, especially with him wanting a new contract. So I think Elijah Surratt would be a really good pick for them here to give them a versatile guy. I think he could play all three positions and play even some of that slot stuff for you. And I just think he's a good fit for that 49er offense.
Yeah, he was in the day 3 conversation in the summer. He's helped himself a ton, and you talked about this a lot. It helps have an accurate quarterback. Fernando's athletic as well. But accuracy is what you're going to get in San Francisco as well, with Brock Purdy when he's healthy and Mac Jones when he's on his game, but last week he was not. All right, I love it. I love it. Next up, pick 28, producer Sharon's Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock here. They're only going to have 2 wide receivers under contract at the end of this season. A.J. Brown, who may or may not be happy with his current situation, and Devonta Smith, who's also a top 10 talent. I gave them Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington. In some ways, he reminds me a little bit of what we saw out of, who's the number 15 for the Bears who came out of Washington? Name's escaping me.
Rome Odunze.
Yeah, reminds me of Rome coming out a little bit. Not quite as athletic, but he is consistently making plays. He's a big body. He had a kick return for a touchdown this year. So they line him up everywhere, and there's a lot to like there. I think he has an opportunity to be a really good player at the next level. Next up, number 29, Dallas Cowboys. This is the Packers pick for Micah Parsons. What are you doing here?
So this was I feel like I liked the tape from last year. Just need to study this year's tape a little bit more. But this was, I feel like, my reach pick here, and going with defensive tackle Christian Miller out of the University of Georgia. We talk about a Cowboys defense that hadn't been able to stop the run, so adding a young interior player that's coming out of a Georgia-type defense will help shore up their run defense.
Yeah, no edge rusher, no cornerback. They got Jeremiah Love with their first-round pick. Line up Christian Miller next to Kenny Clark, if that's the plan. And like I said, this defensive line class is going to be pretty wide open. Next pick, number 30. The Pittsburgh Steelers are picking 30 in the world we're currently living in. And I went with quarterback, and I may be driving this bus by myself. We'll see if it makes its way down the road or goes over the cliff. But I love me some Jaden Maeva, USC quarterback. A transfer from Nevada. He's gotten better each and every year. He has been red hot this season. And Illinois game was impressive. They lost that game, not because of him. Michigan game, he played well, had a silly interception there near the goal line. But all in all, I think he has elevated his game, and he deserves to be in the conversation as one of these top 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks in this class. What do you think of Jaden? We've talked about him a little bit on the podcast.
I think I see what you like about him, but I think there are going to be some other quarterbacks there that probably fit Arthur Smith's system a little bit more. But hey, right. This is your guy. You ride, like you said, you riding this bus, and it's your team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Makes sense.
That's right. It's a home run. All right, here. Pick 31, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What are you going to do for Todd Bowles?
Texas linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. Levante David can't play forever, and now you get a young, athletic guy. Probably doesn't have Levante's just in terms of playmaking ability, but he's young, he's athletic, and he could do a lot for that Todd Bowles defense. So Anthony Hill Jr. here to the Tampa Bay Bucs.
Yeah, it feels like we're having a resurgence of sorts with these off-ball linebackers. C.J. Allen out of Georgia is another name to keep an eye on. We talked about Jake Golday. So we'll see how these guys sort themselves out. But there's so much athleticism in that position. Arvell Reese, Sonny Sykes, of course. Finally, pick 32, the Indianapolis Colts. If we had this conversation over the summer, we might be thinking about a quarterback. Turns out Daniel Jones, best player in the league so far through 6 weeks. I went with Quincy Rhodes Jr., edge rusher out of Arkansas, unverified 6'6", 275. Rare blend of size and athleticism, powerful, scheme versatile. Stout, immovable against the run. He's been a fun watch. I think he's a better player than Landon Jackson was coming out last year, who went in round 2 to the Buffalo Bills. But again, it's mid-October. We got plenty of time to sort this stuff out. That's it. Mock draft. 32 picks, all done here. You can see the recap of picks 26 through 32. And thanks for joining us here on With the First Pick. Check out With the First Pick wherever you get your podcast, scan that QR code, and we will see you guys in the next one.